Okay, shalom. Sorry about the delay, but glad that you could all make it. Thank you for that introduction. My name is Ross Dakin, as was mentioned. I work for Microsoft in New York City. I'm on a small team called Tech and Civic Innovation, and so we're about 6 people, and we find ways to use Microsoft's resources for public good. And a big part of that is involvement with smart cities. So that's what I'm excited to talk to you about today. Before I do, though, I want to talk about a topic that I'm really passionate about and is related to smart cities, which is the decentralization of Silicon Valley. Once upon a time, so this is a map of Silicon Valley, and it's a little bit hard to see here, but these are a lot of the big tech companies that exist or were born out of Silicon Valley. And once upon a time, it was true that you had to be in Silicon Valley if you wanted to be playing in the technical arena. That was the place to be. That was, Sand Hill Road is where all the funding is. This is where computer science engineers coming out of Stanford existed. The whole ecosystem was there. Anybody know this guy? Anybody who works in tech probably knows somebody that looks a lot like that. This is sort of the status quo. This is, in my mind, the tech uniform. I got this online somewhere. This is somebody who works in San Francisco. They have an ironic mustache. They drink their latte every day. They have a fixed gear bicycle, the messenger bag over the shoulder, the iconic hoodie. And this is what drives me crazy about Silicon Valley, and this is what I'm really excited to be moving away from. And I'm excited that the entire industry is moving away from this. If you look at the US today, pockets of innovation and technology are popping up everywhere. New York is a huge example, but Boston, Austin, Chicago, Seattle, Los Angeles, up and down the northeast seaboard there, they're all becoming little pockets of talent. Funding sources are popping up everywhere, and it's really exciting to me because it means that you don't have to be in Silicon Valley anymore, and I think that that's true not just in the US but globally as well. Steve Case, former CEO of AOL, helped a lot with this with his Rise of the Rest book tour, basically trying to help decentralize Silicon Valley in many ways. And if you look at what's going on globally now, Tel Aviv is obviously in there. This is the top 12 in terms of population density for cities that are leading the way in tech worldwide. Anybody watch Silicon Valley? It's okay. So this is the status quo. This is, to me, San Francisco. This is Palo Alto. This is Silicon Valley, and I hate it. And I'm so glad that it's going away because at one point this is what the canonical technologist looked like. But today, this is what a technologist looks like. This is what a technologist looks like. These are what technologists look like. These are a lot of my former colleagues who helped start the US Digital Service and worked in the CTO's office within the White House. And so I love that this is changing. I love that that the sort of stereotype is going out the window. And it's happening because of the democratization of resources. Educational resources. You've got Dev Bootcamp, App Academy, all of these sort of MOOC and certificate programs that are helping fulfill the jobs gap. There is such a shortage of developers and designers and data scientists and people in this field, as I'm sure you're aware of. And so democratizing this, but you don't have to have a 4-year education anymore. You can get a 3-month certificate and fill a job working in Ruby on Rails or JavaScript or something along those lines to actually satisfy some of these needs. I just saw actually the other day, Tel Aviv University is ranked among the world's top startup schools, right up there with them. The democratization of tools. You don't need $10,000 to buy a server anymore. You can rent them for 50 cents an hour using Azure, AWS, or on Heroku, GitHub, Rails, Node.js. These free technologies are helping people get started easier than they ever could before. I also saw that this Tel Aviv is the city obsessed with dogs, apparently, and made an app just for them. So apparently, these are easy to get at because people have a lot of time on their hands and are making apps for dogs. In the accessibility of capital and accelerator programs, Microsoft, again, has one in Israel, or in Tel Aviv. You've got Kickstarter, you've got Y Combinator, OurCrowd, Crowdwise, Indiegogo. There are more ways than ever now to fund your project. And you need less and less capital than you ever did before to start your project. So because of all of these things, the democratization of these resources is allowing for the decentralization of tech. Why is this good? Opportunity. This is fantastic for people in parts of, at least in my country, the middle states that once upon a time could never dream of starting a technology company because they weren't on one of the coasts, are now able to do that at the drop of a hat. Diversity. absolutely critical when you're talking about services that impact lots and lots of people. They should be designed with diversity in mind so that they're not biased in certain ways. But the one that I really want to talk about is specificity. Change happens locally, and I didn't quite appreciate this fully enough until I moved to New York and started working in the local tech scene. Working on it at the federal scale has a broad impact, but it's really not until you actually get down to the local level, see the shelters that people are living in, understand that 50% of people who qualified for food stamps in New York City don't even apply for them, and that has a lot of reasons behind it, but and technology is not a silver bullet, but it's part of it. You have to submit forms here, you have to go there, you have to have an in-person interview. I went online, I couldn't figure out the website to try and figure out how to apply for food stamps. So to me, it's all about local. It's not just smart cities, but it's your smart city. It's the specificity of it. Anybody want to guess how many languages are spoken in New York City? Yell out a number. I heard 100. 800, close to 800 by some estimates. 137 in public schools. So the things that would work, for example, in Tel Aviv, might not work in a city like New York. The things that we need in New York might be completely different than what is needed in a city like this, or in Detroit, or in Chicago, or anywhere else. So the heart of this, and what I really want to stress, is human-centered design. So none of this starts with technology. It all starts with people, and it all ends with people. It's all about people. So a lot of people, you think about smart cities, and what does everybody think of? They think of drones. This is not going to be a talk about drones. They also think of self-driving cars. This is not a talk about self-driving cars. What I want to talk about is, from a human point of view, what I really want to do with this talk is expand the notion of what smart cities means. It's not all about drones, it's not all about smart cities, not about self-driving cars, but a lot of other topics that can actually impact cities and health and happiness in a city and the citizens that live in those cities and their ability to achieve access to city services that might not necessarily be the first things that come to mind when you think of smart cities. I'm also going to check on my time because I know I'm talking quite slowly. So agriculture. Agrilist is one example. This is a New York-based company. It's an intelligence platform for indoor farms. This is the CEO, Allison Kopp. She won TechCrunch Disrupt competition a couple years ago with this idea. And it's basically big data and data science being applied to indoor farming, which is becoming a larger and larger industry. And it's something that can really help reduce carbon footprints in cities. It's something that can help people eat more healthily in cities. And if we can drive the cost down of access to proper nutrition, it can really help with those long-term effects, keeping people out of the emergency rooms, reducing diabetes and heart conditions and whatnot down the road. Another thing related to agriculture was something I noticed recently. There's a bacteria now that is being used to actually excrete calcium deposits. And when it hardens, it can have the effect of essentially fixing weak concrete foundations without having to tear up a building. So somewhat related to biology, somewhat related to infrastructure and to construction, but finding interesting new ways to use, to basically combine different industries for uses that help cities become resilient. Health and safety. Vision Zero is something that we're working on at Microsoft. Vision Zero was started in Europe, and it's an initiative to essentially, it's a vision for zero, thank you. It's a vision for zero vehicular injuries. 16,000 people get hit by cars in New York City every year when they're walking or on their bike. So Microsoft, we're working with a nonprofit called Dakin to say, is there a way that we could help reduce that number using technology in some way? In our case, for example, if you wanted to put slow zones into a city, could you do it in a data-driven way using machine learning rather than sort of gut feeling or anecdotes? Data Bridge is something that New York City is doing to tie all of the different data sets between different city services together. They've been able to use this to do things like achieve a 5x hit rate on which buildings should be condemned because of health and safety issues. In the energy field, 2016 was the first year that renewables actually became cheaper than coal in, I think, 32 countries, which is super exciting. And so that's something that we want to push hard on in the future as well. Education, again, I'm going fast because I'm running short on time here. One other program that I want to mention that Microsoft is doing or sponsoring is called Tech Jobs Academy. Tech Jobs Academy is taking unemployed or underemployed New Yorkers, training them on how to become Microsoft Server administrators, pairing them up with talent agencies to get them placed into jobs using these skills, and thereby basically taking them from below the poverty level and getting them up to Silicon Valley wages in about a 4-month time frame that costs nothing to them. So smart cities is not always about technology. Sometimes it's just about the people. Sometimes it's about filling the achievement gap, closing that jobs gap, using the people that already have the talent, they just didn't have the access to those resources. In this case, the city of New York is actually is paying for a lot of this program because they've got continuing education budget, but until a few years ago, they'd been using that budget for training people on how to be VCR repairmen, for example. So we said, well, why don't we take a little bit of that and run a pilot and train them up on actual modern technology skills? And it's good for Microsoft, it's good for the people, it's good for the city. Logistics. Okay, now we can talk about self-driving cars a little bit. Uber bought Otto. Otto is self-driving trucks. They did a pilot and moved 50,000 cans of Budweiser beer. Deliv, full disclosure, I used to work for them. Deliv is a company that is doing same-day delivery within cities. This is specific to cities because you need the urban density to actually be able to achieve the unit economics to make something like same-day delivery work. But the idea is you go to Macy's.com, for example, you buy something online, it shows up at your house in an hour. It's not driverless cars, but it's combining humans who are crowdsourced with smart algorithms to be able to achieve a short turnaround time. But what about the drones? Okay, we can talk about drones. Amazon successfully made their first delivery last year using drones. 7-Eleven, the convenience store, actually made 77 deliveries successfully using drones. But there are other things that we should be aware of. So, I mean, you can use this for organ delivery, for medical considerations. You can use this for disaster response. If somebody's trapped under rubble, imagine you could connect an infrared sensor and find people that might need emergency responders. And accessibility. This is a photo taken from iNNOVEX, which is a city-specific ID card program in the city of New York. You can have a state driver's license, but you can also have a city ID card. 49% of people in New York City speak more than English at home. Microsoft has lots of translation technology capabilities, so we figured it would be something natural to partner up with. So we partnered and we did a pilot program with iNNOVEX for a couple of weeks, and most of their city staff can handle multiple languages. They speak Spanish, Chinese, French, but in New York, people walk in speaking Hungarian, speaking Tagalog, speaking lots of different languages, and having the ability to have a technology there assist with the translation process really made a lot of these city services more equitable to people that wouldn't otherwise have been able to smoothly get their ID card. There are numerous other examples, and I'll leave you with this graphic from CB Insights that goes over a number of the prominent ones in different fields. And one last quick section that I'll talk about is assessment. The 100 Resilient Cities organization has a model for assessing how smart your city is. And just briefly, they break it down into quadrants, and I highly recommend taking a look at this, but there's leadership and strategy, health and well-being, infrastructure and environment, and economy and society. To put metrics behind how well, to put a benchmark behind your city's smartness level. Okay, and then the difficulties behind this. Technology is not the difficulty anymore. The difficulties behind some of these things are legal challenges. What happens when when artificial intelligence is at fault? What happens if a smart robot causes harm to somebody? Who is liable? Is it the company that made the robot? Is it the owner of the robot? Is it the programmer of the robot? Should we legislate these things? Should we create policy just saying, if a self-driving car has to make a decision between running somebody over or swerving into a tree and potentially killing the driver, how do we make that choice? Incentives and subsidies, which have driven a lot of the adoption of renewable energy, how far should those go? And then permissible evidence. This is interesting. Everybody know the Amazon Alexa? Hey Alexa, order me an Uber. There's a court case in the U.S. right now that is, the prosecutor is trying to get Amazon to turn over all of the audio that was collected by the suspect's Amazon Alexa. because they think that they would be able to listen to the audio and determine whether or not this person is actually guilty of the crime that was committed. So far, Amazon has said, no, we're not going to turn that information over to you. But it's interesting, and it raises the question of what happens when everything that you say is being recorded all the time. And then ethical issues. You can imagine in a case with predictive policing, for example, if you use machine learning or predictive algorithms to say, in this part of town, there are probably going to be some crimes happening tonight, so send all your officers there. You get into really dicey territory, and you've got to make sure that your algorithms and the data that you're feeding these and training these machines with is actually fair and equitable to people, and is not implicitly or explicitly biased and discriminating against certain classes. At the same time, displacement. What happens if we automate away all the jobs? I know a lot of people are afraid of this, and oftentimes it's irrational, but it's something to think about as technology rapidly progresses, and perhaps makes the case for universal basic income, perhaps makes the case for other sorts of subsidies. It's not for me to say, but certainly considerations beyond the technical aspects of this sort of thing. So in summary, cities are important. More and more people are moving to them, especially young people. Diversity matters a lot. It's about more than drones. It's about more than technology, especially the hurdles that we're encountering and some of the ethical and moral and policy considerations these days. And my final plea would be, please work on things that matter. It is so easy to go work on another way of optimizing advertisements or whatnot. But I was really encouraged by a lot of the companies that I met with today, using IoT, doing things to improve people's health, getting citizen feedback from cities. And so I'm really excited and engaged by this group. And so thank you for your time and attention, and thank you for inviting me to be with you. It's also my first time in Israel, and I'm having a fabulous time so far. So thanks a lot.